podcast is a production of Widener Law Commonwealth in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. For more information, visit commonwealthlaw.widener.edu/podcast. Now here's your host, Julie Sheldon.
Welcome to Widener Law Commonwealth's podcast. Today we are talking about what to expect in your first year of law school. And I am joined today with Assistant Dean Rainey Teplitz. Hi. And also two first-year students, Shanna Costa and Gabriela Romeo. So thanks so much, ladies, for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for inviting us.
Of course. So I'm going to start with Dean Teplitz. Can you just give us a little bit of an overview of what you do in your role and specifically how maybe you may help first-year students?
I am very fortunate because in my role as the Assistant Dean of Students at Widener Commonwealth Law School, I get to be involved in, very directly involved in the student success, whether it be academically, their overall well-being, their engagement in our Widener community. And it's a really exciting job to work so closely with the students because there is a direct connection between overall student well-being and their academic success. And I really enjoy being a part of that. In other words, the students would probably say that I get all in their business and every aspect of their time here in Widener, but our students are wonderful. So I think I have the best job on campus.
And now I kind of want to start this conversation with what students may expect coming in versus the reality. So, ladies, if you want to weigh in at any time, Dean Teplitz, I'll let you kind of kick it off a little bit. So what are some of the differences? You know, this person's excited. It's their first year. You know, they're just coming in, and while they know that it's going to be tough and stressful, it's also pretty rewarding. But what are some of the specific milestones that sometimes people may miss as they kind of come in? What are they expecting versus what may actually be the reality?
Well, I think that a lot of times the students expect that their law school experience is going to be similar to their college experience, and that is completely inaccurate. And so if a student is coming in with that idea, I think that they're going to be discombobulated very quickly once they get here. The expectations are very different. Here at law school, we expect that you are going to be prepared on your first day of class. There's no, 1 week buffer or a few weeks to get the books kind of, buffer period. So the preparation expectations are different. The learning style is different. The way to prepare for exams is different. And so, if a student comes in ill-prepared in that respect, then I think it's going to take them a little bit longer to get acclimated. What are your thoughts?
I would agree with all of that. And I think stemming from, the preparation for classes, you have to be prepared, but, it's made me a better student the way I have to prepare for class because, in my undergrad, I didn't have to do a lot to do well. And I did well, and that was great. And then I took 3 years off of school, and I came back to school. And like Dean Teplitz said, it's a whole different world. What you have to, buy your books so far in advance so you can be prepared for the first day of class. And, you expect that your professors are going to call on you and expect you to be prepared, and you don't want to be the student that's unprepared. Obviously, nothing's going to go wrong if you're unprepared. They'll move on and talk to another student. But it's truly made me a better student because I know what's expected of me when I show up to class. And, as time has gone on, I've learned what certain professors want from a student when they call on them in class. So I understand for my contracts class, this might be what to prepare for as compared to my torts class, what my professor is going to look from me when they call on me.
I also agree that it's much different than undergrad because I think a lot of people think that if they were a good student in undergrad that they're automatically going to be a good student in law school, and that's not always the case because you had a lot less work in college no matter what your major was. The workload is a lot bigger here and a lot harder to manage. You could be in extracurricular activities, parts of sororities and fraternities in undergrad, and it's harder to be involved in other things here. It's a lot of doing schoolwork all day while you're in class and going home and doing schoolwork all night to prepare for the next day. And I feel like a lot of people in undergrad aren't ready for that or they're not familiar with that, so it takes a little bit longer to get used to that when you get to law school.
what are some of the common stressors? I mean, we talked a little bit about how there's going to be more of a workload, and you know, being involved in extracurricular activities may be a little more not quite as easy to do because you may not have as much time. What are some of the other common stressors that you have both experienced, and how do you deal with them? What are some of your techniques?
Something that I've never thought would stress me out, but I found has stressed me out, is seeing other people's study habits. What works for them versus what works for me. So, like, I don't normally have a problem studying with people, but if I'm reading a case next to someone reading the same case and they finish it before me, that'll stress me out because I didn't read it as fast as them, which it doesn't matter. But I've had to learn what works for me to study, and so if I need to separate myself and study by myself for a period of time, or if I need to study in a group to help understand a concept.
And what are some of the tools that you use that have maybe helped you discover your best study habits, or what has helped you kind of prepare more?
I'll change my environment. I might study for one class in the library and then go home and study at my kitchen table. Or I'm a big fan of coffee shops. I literally Google like coffee shops in Harrisburg and go to a different coffee shop all the time because the change of environment, it's not like boring to me. I like a little bit of noise in the background when I'm doing something. If it's too quiet, then I just get distracted. And if I'm doing the same thing over and over and over, like constantly going to the library and sitting at the same desk reading the same material, I'm going to get bored. Mm-hmm. So finding a new environment has really helped me.
Shannon?
So I agree with the stressors of being compared to other students and people asking you, like, how long did that take you? Or after coming back from a break, they're like, we did all of our outlines. What did you do? And it's just like you can't get caught up in comparing yourself to people because everyone works at different time speeds and everything else. But I actually am one of those students who works very well alone. Like, I almost can't do homework with other people because it's very distracting. Like, I'm easily distracted and I need to work on things where I can focus. So luckily, my boyfriend works night shift and I can go home every day and work on homework by myself with my 2 dogs every night. But if I need a break, I can play with my dogs or cook dinner, like just anything that helps relieve the stress for a little bit but doesn't distract you so long that you can't motivate yourself to start working again. So I like to just take little breaks, and I also commute from Halifax, so I'm around some family, so I can go over and see family for an hour or so before I go back. So that helps to relieve some of the stressors that I face when I'm constantly doing homework.
And I think that they really highlight some real important points that I hear over and over again. The students, law school is a competitive environment, and I see the students really get caught up in sort of the minutia of what everybody else is doing rather than focusing on what is right for them. And when you're too focused on what everyone else is doing, I think it not only messes with your mind, but it plays with your self-confidence. Everybody here is smart. All of our students did well in college. That's why they were admitted to law school. And so you need to build on the foundation that worked for you at the undergrad level and adapt it to the requirements of the law school level and not worry about what everyone else is doing. And that does seem to be a pretty persistent issue, I think, in first-year students that causes them stress. And it's interesting to hear Gabby's perspective on the coffee shop, because whenever I see one of our students in a coffee shop, I always lecture them on doing their work in a coffee shop. So
they're like little amps on State Street. That's my favorite place. And like the one barista, he like knows that I'm in law school because I go there all the time. He's like, "What are you working on this time?" And I just sit there, and it's fun to see, for me, to see people coming in and out. And I'm like, maybe that person's an attorney. Like that could be me one day. I just got to keep studying.
But see, I think that would be distracting. But what works? But it shows what works for one doesn't necessarily work for somebody else.
I found too, like, it's very easy to be hard on yourself and say, like, I should be studying. I have to be studying. This is what I'm here to do. This is what I came here for. I've got 3 years, like, nose in my books. Like, I got this. And then I have to remind myself, I like to say, like, I have to give myself permission to do something. Like, give yourself that permission to do something that's not school-related. Read a book, watch a movie, go for a walk. I have a cat. I pet my cat. Like, just something that's – and, like, I've also found, like, finding a friend that's not in law school. I love my friends that I made here. They're fantastic. But when you're with law students, you talk about law school. And sometimes you need to not talk about law school. So finding people, like finding a part-time job or something that you'll meet people that aren't in law school so you can just not talk about law school for a change, and that helps too.
Shannon, you touched a little bit on the fact that you live close to family. And while family is always a wonderful support, sometimes they may not understand what the first year is like or what law school is like. How do you draw boundaries to ensure that you're still giving yourself enough time, but also still maintaining a relationship, talking to your parents, all those things that are important?
That's actually one of the hardest parts about law school. That was going to be my answer to another question, because I'm very family-oriented and they don't understand. Like, they want me to be there for all the important events and come over for dinner throughout the week. And I just have to tell them that they have to wait for me to reach out to them. Like, I will reach out to them if I have time. If there's a day where I have a little bit less homework than I usually do, I will reach out to them and say, hey, do you want to have dinner? But they have to know that it has to be on my terms for 3 years. Like, you need to have a support system that realizes that you have a very serious job to do for 3 years, and they just can't interfere. And they have a hard time realizing that sometimes, and I feel bad missing out on things or telling them that I can't, but they've gotten used to it, and they say, like, if you can't do it, don't, and they're getting to be more understanding 2 semesters in. They're slowly getting it.
Kevin, what's your experience with that?
Mine's actually a lot different. My brother's in medical school. He's in his first year of medical school, so we're kind of doing similar things at the same time, and my dad's a physician, so he, like, professional school, like, he was a professional student, because he went to school forever, but so he sees the dynamic of what it's like and how much work you have to put into it. So for me, like, I can call my brother and say, hey, like, what are you working on? And we're kind of each other's break for 10 minutes from doing homework, but we both know we're extremely busy and, like, what it takes to complete law school, medical school, whatever that is. And my parents, I unfortunately don't live close to my parents. They're about 3 hours away. So when they come visit, like, I always tell, they're like, do you have work to do? I'm like, I always have work to do. But if you tell me when you're coming, I can make it work. I will do my homework in advance, or I'll tell you, like, give me 2 hours by myself, let me do this, and find something else to do. And we make it work. But I unfortunately don't get to see my parents that often.
Okay. And I want to back up just a little bit to that day when you get your acceptance letter and you take everything in and you're super excited. Dean Toplitz, what is your advice to students from the moment they get that letter until the moment they walk through the door? Because I feel like that preparation in that time period is just as important as, after that first day.
Absolutely. You definitely want to, I think, do a self-evaluation of your life and your lifestyle to see if there are issues that you think would create obstacles once you arrive at law school. And if you identify any issues, whether it be a health issue or childcare issues, work-related issues, anxiety issues, to try to find the tools to resolve them before you get to law school. That way, once you get here, you can focus on your studies and not have external hindrances that are impeding your work. So I think really putting your house, so to speak, in order before you get here is really a mandate. It's something that will go a long way for you once you get here and in supporting your success. I also think if you're a traditional student and you're coming right from college to law school, I would recommend really taking that summer to, find a sense of freedom and well-being and, develop healthy lifestyle habits, have fun that summer. It is going to be a tough 3 years. And I think that you should give yourself permission to, celebrate your graduation from college and celebrate your admission to law school. And come up with some broad strokes as to how you're going to manage your time and your studies and your well-being once you're here. But overall, I think you should take that summer off and enjoy it.
And now we talked a little bit about some hurdles kind of in a very broad sense, but what are some common hurdles that maybe people don't think about that may happen in their first year? Stresses that, people maybe in their undergrad, it wasn't a big deal, but now as you're in law school, it it really is, and it's something nobody ever really thought to think of as even a stress or a hurdle.
I think for me, when I think of this, I go back to that idea of in college you may have been able to, and I think Gabby had mentioned this earlier, do well with fairly little preparation. And I know that in my personal experience, that was me, where in college I, did very, very well and really had to exert very, very, very little effort to do very well. And so when I got to law school, it took me a while to find my footing because suddenly I was in an environment where everybody did well in college, and now you had to really work at it to get decent grades. And plus, because of my maybe lax study habits in college,
it levels the playing field really when you come here.
I had to figure things out quickly once I got to law school, and again that shook my self-confidence, and that is something that I had never struggled with in an academic environment, and so that for me was a new experience and something that really threw me off for a long time. So I think it's important to understand that not everybody's going to be the top of the class, and that's okay. You don't have to be top of the class to go on to pass the bar exam and have a great career. You do the best that you can do for yourself, and again, it goes back to worrying about yourself and not what everybody else is doing. You have to find your path, the path that you're supposed to go down.
Every year, it's something new I kind of started in the past 2 years, is I try and pick a word for myself that I kind of want to embody that year. And my word this year I chose was grow. And I found this quote when I had graduated from college, and it said, "Our ability to grow is directly proportional to our ability to entertain the uncomfortable." And law school is just that. There's so many things I want to grow in. I want to grow as a student and as a friend, and this can at times be an uncomfortable environment, and I've had to challenge myself to do things I didn't do in my undergrad, and I never went to visit a professor unless I had to. It was like pulling teeth because I'm not always one to ask for help. I like to do it. I could do this. I got this. Let me at it. And that doesn't always work, and I had to accept that I needed to change something I was doing and step into a professor's office and ask them for help and say, "I don't understand this case," or can you go over this concept again, or what do you think about this sentence in a paper, and step out of my comfort zone to help myself grow and be a better student and just a better person all around.
So going off of having to be more prepared in law school than you were in undergrad, I think one of the biggest stressors in law school that people don't know about going in is cold calling. Because in undergrad, you barely have to read to go to class. You just do the big assignments, the projects, and that gets you an A. But
so that wasn't just me.
Yeah, no, that was me too. I did that too. We're lucky if I bought my textbooks.
But now, if you don't read, you look bad at the professor if you aren't able to answer a cold call question, and then you're also not prepared in knowing the material from reading the cases, because I don't think a lot of people know that there aren't a lot of assignments that you can do to raise your grade or prepare yourself for the semester. Reading cases is how you learn the law, how you become prepared and more familiar with everything else. So if you don't read, you're not prepared, and it holds you back for most of the semester if you don't get caught up. So I think that's something that a lot of people aren't familiar with.
So now cold calling, just in case some of our listeners aren't familiar, it's just when you get called on in class, kind of a little bit out of the blue, they'll ask you for an opinion or an answer for something.
They'll just say, Ms. Romeo, can you help me with, and they ask you a question.
Don't even raise your hand.
Takes you. The first time someone cold called on me, I sat there and I was like, oh, that's my name. It took me a minute to understand what was happening. And they mispronounced my name, and I was like, I'm really sorry, but it's Romeo. And he's like, oh, okay, no, it's okay. And then I had to rethink, okay, wait, no, what did they just ask me? I have to answer a question. Did I read this case? Did I brief this case? And as time has gone on, it's gotten a lot easier, and you understand what certain professors want from you when they cold call, and some want a page number and a line. Where did you find that in the text? Read it to me, show it to me. Other professors want the facts from a case. Others, they could care less. They're going to tell you what happened. They know you can figure that out. They want something else from you.
Okay. As we kind of move forward, what have been some of your best and maybe not so best experiences in your first year? What has taught you things? What would you do over again? Or what would you What do you look back on as a learning experience?
I feel like there's a lot of things. I think to start off on a good note, like one of the best experiences for me was joining the SBA, the Student Bar Association, because it was as an organization at the school, but it wasn't academic. It was a way to meet new students, upperclassmen, and be involved and like go to different events on campus and do something that I was still part of the community here at Widener, but it wasn't putting my nose in a book and reading for class. And then I think one of my greatest challenges was finals. Like your first final is terrifying, like because the majority of your grade is a final exam. Like Shannon had mentioned, like you don't have projects and papers and stuff leading up that can maybe cushion your grade. It's a final exam, and you want to do well on it. And I think looking back on last semester, the way I was happy with the way that I studied for finals, but I wasn't necessarily happy with the way that I prepared all semester. And I didn't cram at the end, but I realized there was a lot more I could have done throughout the semester, like typing my notes after class and reviewing a concept the same day rather than like 2 weeks later when I was ready to put it into my outline because I wanted to update my outline, and staying on top of material in that way. Like, yeah, instead of walking away from class and be like, all right, well, I'll get to it when I have to study for the final, like reviewing it within a day or two of having it in class makes a huge difference.
I think one of the best experiences is coming back from winter break and seeing if everything you were doing the first semester was right or not. Like, you can see if your work paid off. And in my case, I think it was really a relief because I was nervous at how I was going to motivate myself to come back after winter break because I was just like, this was such an awesome break. You got to have a life, and how are you going to go back to doing law school 24/7? But when you see that everything you did is paying off, and now you get to go to interviews and apply for internships, and you're getting good feedback from professors, and they're asking me to be research assistants and things like that. That was the best experience because it just showed me that it was worth it. And everyone always says, like, after the end of your 3 years, it'll be worth it, everything that you went through. And I think I saw that when I came back from winter break. And then the worst experience or the biggest challenges, I would agree with finals. It's like they're very close together, and there's so much, like, it's different because you don't have tests throughout the semester to test you on certain concepts. You're learning everything you've learned the whole semester and being tested on all of it at once. And they're very long, so it's like 3 hours of just trying to remember everything you've learned and get it down into a coherent way while not running out of time for the rest of the questions at the end of the final. So I would agree with Gabby in that sense.
Dean Teplitz, as we start to kind of talk about finals and grading, how do you handle students who may be struggling a little bit academically, or when can students come to you and say, hey, I'm having a tough time. How can I right the ship on this? How can I make sure that I'm still successful?
Students can come to me at any point, particularly because as both Gabby and Shannon mentioned, you don't often have assessments throughout the term, so you don't have that feedback to really know where you're at. So a lot of times students feel like they're struggling, even if they really may not be struggling. But here at Widener, we actually do an amazing job providing that extra academic support for students. Many law schools, you don't have a whole lot of access to faculty and administrators outside of the classroom. And here, we have an extraordinary faculty that are incredibly accessible to our students outside of the classroom. And so if a student is struggling, I always recommend that they go directly to their faculty member, because I don't think that there is a professor on this campus that wouldn't go above and beyond for one of our students. In fact, they routinely hold outside of classroom time review sessions for the students. They give them hypothetical problems to write out and get feedback on. And that's just in addition to a student being able to walk in with essentially an open door policy to get access to ask questions. I've heard multiple times from students who struggled during that first semester that the one thing that they wish they had done was go seek out that extra assistance with their faculty members, because, and I think it was Gabby that mentioned this, there was a perception at their particular college, maybe they went to a very large undergrad school, that the faculty members weren't accessible, or that they were just sort of a number in an auditorium. And so they didn't feel like they could go ask for assistance. And so coming here to Widener with our small community and the small number of full-time faculty, they didn't realize that's part of our culture here. And so that's something I see a lot of students course correcting in their second semester. So that is definitely one way that I encourage their academic success if a student feels like they're struggling. Another is we offer skill-based programs during the fall semester to provide extra support, as well as the spring semester. We also are running workshops. Like in April of this year, we're going to have some test anxiety workshops to help students prepare for finals, to get over some of their fears so that they don't freeze up in that moment. Also, I'm a strong proponent of stepping away from things when it feels too stressful. If you are feeling overstressed, then whatever study time you're putting in is not going to be particularly productive. So I think it's really important to have outside interests, whether it be something completely outside of the Widener community, or, like Gabby mentioned, being part of the SBA here, being engaged within the Widener community. And both Gabby and Shannon are first-year students, and they're going to see as they progress into their next year that there's going to be even more opportunities for them to be engaged in various clubs and organizations or honor societies here. And I think it's important to have a well-rounded experience. I think that goes a long way towards supporting their academic success. We also have upper-level students that help in specific classes to serve as mentors or tutors. So we have a lot of supportive resources. The students just have to, acknowledge that they need that. They need that extra support, and there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. It's not a statement on anything other than I'm fuzzy in contracts, which you know what, I am too. And that's okay.
There's no shame in admitting that.
There's no shame in admitting that, and I passed the bar, so that is okay. And also, just if there's things that they enjoy doing outside of law school, they should still build that into their schedule. I think that's very important in maintaining your physical and your mental wellness as well.
And that you lead me kind of right into my next question there with that. We talked a lot about the academic wellness, but how, what do you do to maintain your physical wellness, your emotional well-being? A student may come in and say, I'm doing great in school, but I'm not quite feeling myself, or I'm very, very stressed about this, or my relationships are failing because I'm spending so much time, I'm dedicated to law school. How do you keep yourself well-rounded physically and emotionally? What are some of the resources that are out there? And maybe if you ladies have used any that, how do you do that?
So from our perspective at Widener, we are definitely seeing an uptick in student stress and anxiety, or at least students that are coming forward and talking about that stress and anxiety. So we are really looking internally at how to boost our health and wellness initiatives. And as part of that, we offer our students, by contract with an outside counseling agency, up to 5 free counseling sessions per academic year, where they can go speak with a counselor, completely free to them, confidential. We get no information about the session other than providing them with the referral. So they can talk about whatever they want, whether, it's anxiety or stress or depression or relationship issues. What we provide them with that outlet. We're also implementing fitness classes, to help, alleviate stress, because research shows that endorphins, naturally help to reduce stress levels. We have meditation class on campus. We, like I mentioned earlier, we are going to have some test anxiety workshops. And so, we're really cognizant of the external pressures that our students are facing. And from our perspective, we're trying to offer as many resources as we can to help minimize that piece as much as we can. I don't know, if there's something you do to help alleviate stress?
I do try and give myself at least one night a week where I don't do homework. That I tell myself, like, you're not going to look. It's usually Friday night because by the end of the week you're done.
Tired of looking at things, yeah.
Yeah, and then I give maybe I go and get coffee with a friend or I take a nap. I'm a big advocate for napping, but I give myself one block of time at least a week to not do anything school-related, and whether that means going to do another activity or actually last semester around finals time started to run on the treadmill. I hate to run. It's one of my least favorite activities, but it helped because, I couldn't think about much while I was running. I would, put on some music or go with a friend, and we would just catch up about our lives, and that was an hour of my day that wasn't thinking about school or any other stressors in my life. I try to take everything just one day at a time and not think about, okay, well, I have this thing to do for Friday, or, my first final is on April whatever, May 2nd, or whatever day it might be, and just what do I need to do to get through today and what's going to get me through tomorrow, and that's all I can do. And just, I smile at people. It helps.
I definitely agree with the naps, but I also try to find the nights that I have one class the next day or I have a class where I can do homework in between classes and try and do something on that night that isn't all homework. So Wednesday nights I go to puppy class, which I'm training my puppy and he learns how to be a good boy there. And then Monday nights my mom usually brings dinner over. Sundays I go to my dad's for brunch. Just little things here and there that interrupt the constant homework. And again, it's on my terms to let my family know when that works out for me to do that. And I think that's the best way, is just to make sure that you're not taking a whole day to never do homework, and that will really unmotivate me. I'll not want to do homework then the next day. But if I just take a little bit of a break and do something fun to get my mind off of it, and like Gabby mentioned earlier, talking to people that aren't in law school really helps. Even though they don't understand when you're trying to do a bunch of homework, they're like, what do you mean you have to do homework? It's just nice not to talk about it for a little bit. So I definitely agree with that.
And kind of what I heard from both of you is there's a little bit of a schedule. There's a routine that you've built in that helps. Once you know that, then it's easier to give yourself permission for that Friday night to go get pizza and lay on the couch a little bit. Or it's easier to say, okay, well, after brunch, I'm going to study for 2 hours. So how important is it to have, I'm going to term it as a flexible schedule to know where you're going and how you're planning out things?
I think it's very important to have a flexible schedule. As much as you'd, I think, like to be rigid and know, I'm going to do my contracts homework from 10 to 12, and then I'm going to do this from this time to this time. Life doesn't work like that, You end up with, recording this podcast was normally during this time. I would maybe work on other homework or do something different. And obviously I'm not because I'm here. But this was something fun that I was excited to do. And you have to understand that you have to make time for those things. So I think what kind of goes hand in hand with that is just not getting behind. As long as, like I said, you're staying on top of what you need to do for the next day, at least for me, that works. I know that I at least have accomplished what I need for the next 24 hours, and that's fine. And if some wrench gets thrown in that, I need to be flexible. I'm able to do that.
Okay. Now, kind of as we begin to wind down a little bit, what made the both of you, what made all of you want to go to law school? Was there a person who inspired you? Did you watch something that just made you think, I want to be an advocate for this group of people, or what made you passionate about it?
I'll go first. I've just always wanted to go to law school, literally as long as I can remember. That's what I've wanted to do, and that's always the subject matter, the class that the subject matter interested me the most. I got to take a government and law class in high school, and that's when I really got to learn more about it, aside from law shows and stuff. But then when I went to college, I had so many opportunities there where I was able to actually immerse myself into the law and see the kind of difference I could make. I had an internship in undergrad for 2 years with the Common Pleas Court judge, and that's when I knew for sure that I wanted to go to law school, because I got to see that he was the treatment court judge, which helps people who have been convicted of drug and DUI and even crimes related to mental health be part of a program that forces them to become productive members of society again. They go to parenting classes, they get jobs, and the judge and the district attorney and the public defenders, probation officers, they all are part of their team. Like, they work with them to help them transition back into society, and that's exactly what I want to do when I graduate from here, is be part of that kind of program. So I think my love for the law just kind of grew as I was able to be exposed to more law-related experiences, and everyone tried to talk me out of going to law school when I was working at the courthouse. They're like, don't do this and everything, but it just made me want to go even more, seeing how much I enjoyed observing everything. So that's what solidified my decision.
I have kind of personal and professional reasons for coming back to school, because I actually took 3 years off. I finished my undergrad in 2015, and I stepped into a full-time job, and I had a great job. It was a nice job. I was bored. I had always wanted to go to law school, but when I had finished my undergrad, I was done. I didn't want to be in school anymore. I had done that for 13 years of my life. I wanted to work, so I did. And like I said, I was bored. I needed a challenge. I needed something different. And every time I looked for a job, anything that interests me still fell within the legal field. And so I remember sitting at my desk one day at work, and I was annoyed with something that had happened, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to law school. And I signed up for the LSAT. I took the LSAT, and here I am. But I grew up with a foster brother, and that really shaped my life. A lot of things happened because of that. And knowing that I can work in like children and youth services and helping families and change a life like my brother's life means a lot to me, because I've seen lives of people that are so different than mine, and knowing that I can help them with this type of degree, because it changed my life so much. The aspect of that just it hits home, but that's what I'd like to do, like why I'm here.
I would say my experience is sort of similar to Gabby's. I'm not sure why I ultimately chose law school, but I always had I always understood that my upbringing was very fortunate, and I knew that there were so many people in need who struggled, and so I wanted to help people who may not always have a fair shake in life, to try to have a better life. And so ultimately, when I came to law school, it was really to pursue a career involving social justice issues, working with low-income populations. Ultimately, my primary experience when I was practicing law, I worked with victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. So I feel like I accomplished what I had intended to do when I went to law school. So I'm very grateful for my law school experience. I'm glad that was the path I chose, and I know that because I chose that path, I've certainly made a difference in people's lives and made people's lives better because of it.
Well, that's so inspirational from all of you. Just one final question about some resources, Dean Teplitz. Is there any outside suggested reading that you would, if somebody is thinking of going to law school or in their first year, are there any specific titles that you may recommend as they make that decision?
There's definitely a lot of resources out there, and I think it can become overwhelming pretty quickly. I know here at Widener, a couple of resources that we like are One Ell of a Year by Leah Christensen, One Ell of a Ride by Andrew McClurg, and those books basically give a broad overview of what that first year law school experience looked like. We also recommend Writing Essay Exams to Succeed in Law School, written by our very own Professor John Dernbach, which is a nice brief snapshot into best practices in putting together a law school exam. I think what's most important is to find a resource that speaks to the person that is looking for that guidance, because some resources are very dense and others are more accessible, and not buying every resource that's out there. When I was a law student, I bought like every supplemental book that was available for every law school subject, and that's not really a winning strategy. That creates, I think, more chaos and stress than it does as far as being helpful. So I think that these books give you a broad snapshot, and once you get to law school, your professors have a good sense of supplemental materials that are useful for their particular classes, so that you're using ones that are really meaningful and directed towards the materials that they're using. There's a lot of great supplemental materials that can help you do practice questions and things like that. There's a lot of different series that we can direct students to.
Okay. So thank you all for joining me. As you know, I like to end kind of with a fun question. So the fun question this time is, we're moving into spring. So what is your favorite springtime flower? And if there's a reason behind it or meaning, happy to share that too.
Okay. I love peonies. And I said I like them because they're pretty at every stage, from when they're like just a little bud to when they're fully bloomed, and they smell nice, and they fill up a room.
Nice.
And, yeah.
Okay, so Gabby and I did not plan this, but that was going to be mine too.
She stole your answer, right?
It's a lot like a carnation, which is my birth flower. It's like the birth flower for January, so I just like both of them. I actually have a tattoo of a peony, so yeah, I like them.
Yes, we actually discussed this question in advance.
It wasn't a cold call question.
No, not a cold call.
So to our listeners, it wasn't a cold call question.
Yeah, so we did recognize that there were similarities in the answers, because I do like peonies also. But as I was telling Gabby and Shannon, I have a black thumb. Like, I kill any flower that I touch or even look at. So I try to stay away from that area. So I like to look from afar, and I just like really anything that's bright colored and cheery. So nothing. Not a specific flower.
Okay, very nice. Well, again, thank you so much for joining me. And to our listeners today, please stay tuned for our next episode. And also, please leave reviews of our podcast. And thanks so much for listening. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Widener University Commonwealth Law School is the Pennsylvania capital's only law school, with 3 specialized centers of legal scholarship through its Law and Government Institute, Environmental Law and Sustainability Center, and Business Advising Program. Widener Law Commonwealth offers an exceptional learning experience that is personal, practical, and professional. Visit commonwealthlaw.widener.edu for more information.